Welcome to the Improv Summit. As always, I'm your host, Spencer, and with me today I have a very special guest. Now, I always say I have a very special guest, but in order to make it fun and different and unique, I've taken that person's first letter, their first name, and I take an adjective that starts with that first letter, that first name, and I just turn it into an adjective, like that old improv game. So today I have with me Jolly Jason. How's it going, Jason?
I'm doing all right. I'm jolly, apparently, so that's nice.
Yeah, I can never think of a J name, like a J adjective for some reason, so it's always like Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. And then today it became a new one.
Janky Jason.
So,
that's who I am.
What is it?
Just janky.
Oh, janky. I didn't even think. I was trying to be like nice about it. I didn't have to like make it. Ooh, I like jovial.
Yeah.
I like jovial. That's nice. Let's dive in and talk about you and your improv experience. Jason, what is your background in improv?
Sure. I started off at an independent team. Well, first I did sketch. Right after college, I got into sketch comedy and really liked it. It was with a couple of guys in Phoenix, Arizona. And they didn't have the best attitude towards improv. And so I was kind of put off by it just because they talked a lot of smack and that kind of influenced me a little bit. So I did that. I did some stand-up. And then it wasn't until maybe a year or two after that, which would be about 2013, maybe even 2014, that I started training improv at this place called the Acting Center, which was in Hollywood at the time. Now it's in Sherman Oaks. Learned a lot from, actually, so my instructor, Rupert, he was a direct student descendant of Charna Halpert, which, later on in my comedy career, I realized that's a big name, but not a pretty dubious name in the LA improv community, at least.
But I mean, I guess like even building up, I mean, it is a name that you know of for building a community, but then also just casually destroying it in 1 week.
Charna. If you don't know Charna and Del Close when you're like starting off improv, you're probably not paying enough attention. But after that, I started training at UCB for a bit, and I enjoyed it. I did. It was at the Franklin, which no, not Franklin. It was on Sunset.
Sunset.
East. Just like how many improv houses have closed down in the last 2 years. That's one of them. And then I actually was a student at IO West, and I was climbing that ladder for a bit, and then IO West shut down.
Sure did.
What was that, 2019, 2018, something around
I think it was 2018. I had graduated 6 months prior, but I was still working as the Twitter intern. And I heard through the grapevine that we were closing. I didn't hear about it through social media team. And I went, should I post about this, or is this happening? What's going on? What should I do?
I'll tell you that 3 weeks after IO West announced their closing, that was a party at IO West. I mean, people came in droves, people were crying, people were laughing. A good friend of mine, Lauren Miller, was a bartender there. And she was there 5-6 nights a week, whether performing, bartending, whatever. And that was such a special place because like there was no other improv house that had a bar. I loved IO West for obviously more reasons than that, but like that was such a big draw, and I never quite understood why they couldn't capitalize on that. I mean, obviously, the money was being diverted to Chicago, but yeah.
Yeah, there's also speculation in terms of, I mean, I would say the classes weren't like super full all the time. Like I had classes that was like 6 or 7 people, but there's no way they didn't make their rent from that bar. Like there's no way. That bar was always like, people would go to drink and they wouldn't even go to shows. I know people are like, where's the closest bar around here? And I'm like, you literally can go right here and get a drink. People off the street would go get bar drinks and then leave. So there's no way they weren't paying their rent from that bar.
I mean, it was always relatively well priced, especially for Hollywood Boulevard. But I just miss that space. Like that's where improv is supposed to be. Like as much as I liked UCB Sunset, it was just so sterile and it felt like you were going to like a campus, to a college. It was a
Sure did.
comedy college. IO West was dingy and gross and
Uh-huh.
black box as fuck and just bare
Yeah.
bones, which I think improv needs that.
I mean, improv is bare bones. I mean, literally,
Yeah,
it is.
it's literally humble origins. Like you literally are creating something out of nothing. And I thought that environment was just really nice. I tried to get into Nerdist, but Nerdist shut down right when I was looking at
Hmm.
it. I was on an independent short form team where we performed in Hollywood, a couple places around Hollywood. We were at the Four Clubs a lot, which was on Vine in Santa Monica, I believe.
Yeah, Vine in Santa Monica.
Yeah, we did a lot of work there in that back room, which was great until they started to get like some really good performers, and they were just
And they like renovated the space and everything.
yeah, it was a great. They did a wonderful job there. I was part of a musical improv team that we used to perform there quite a bit.
Which is funny. I don't know if you know this, but I know about half of that team, and I had no idea you were on it because I didn't meet you until after I knew everyone else.
The Aces of Improv?
So, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't know that you knew people like Nathan. And
I knew. No, I know. I think Eric was on there.
Eric Blair.
Danny Sugimoto.
Dan is great. Yeah.
So I was like, because then I think I like through Gunfight, I was like, I feel, and I was like, oh, Aces of Improv, and I was like, oh wait, I know people on this team.
Yeah, I met some good people through that. Yeah, that was a nice one. I really enjoyed my time with that. I always wanted us to get a little bit more into short form, into long form. I mean, just because I feel like that's where you really get to create and expand and play and make this universe. You know, doing Armandos or Harold's and all that stuff. But yeah, I just love the immediacy of it. I love the instincts. I think it keeps you really sharp. I am very rusty. I did a couple online improv shows during the pandemic, but there's nothing like working off of somebody face to face. So I'm actually probably on Friday. There's a place here in New York called the People's Improv Theater. And just for reference, I moved to New York 5 weeks before the pandemic.
Good for you.
Right? Really good timing. And I didn't really get a chance to go to a lot of comedy in New York. 5 weeks, I was looking for jobs, I was doing whatever. And as soon as I got settled in, I got to see a friend of mine who was in Aces of Improv, who's now a very good stand-up comedian. And she writes for, well, she did write for Impractical Jokers, but I think she's writing for something else now. But her name is Cassie White. She's great. I went to go see her at the Broadway Comedy Club, which they do improv there too, and they do musical improv up top. So those are two things that, like, now that things seem to be opening up a little bit more in the city, which they were almost wide open, and then Omicron, man, it
obliterated.
That week before Christmas felt a lot like March 2020. Yeah. That was scary because I was just like, oh crap, I work at a gym, I cater. Like, these are all jobs that with Omicron are going to be the first to go. And lo and behold, I haven't had a catering gig since the week before Christmas. Because everybody canceled parties, and nobody parties in New York in January anyway.
Yep.
And the gym, I kind of sort of got furloughed from my position. So we don't really know when that is going to open up again. It's tough. But I'm hoping to go over to People's Improv Theater and Broadway Comedy Club and see if I can get some yucks in, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I've heard Pitt is great actually. I know a lot of people who do improv there, and that's a New York specific. I think it's New York specific. I don't think it's anywhere else. Yeah.
They shut down the UCB out here, or at least one of them. I think the Chelsea.
Hell's Kitchen, I think, is still there, right?
Yeah, Hell's Kitchen's there, but Chelsea's closed, which doesn't make any sense because Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen are like super close to each other.
Isn't Hell's Kitchen more expensive too, though? Like that's what's interesting. Or is Chelsea? I don't know about Chelsea. Is Chelsea
Chelsea's
expensive?
way more expensive.
Oh,
Chelsea is
okay.
right on the Hudson. I mean, Hell's Kitchen is too, but Hell's Kitchen is a little bit more midtowny. Um, that's where they were putting prisoners from Rikers Island because they had too many prisoners. So they would
Mm,
put them up in hotels in Rikers Island and say like, legally they have to spend X amount of hours outside. You can't keep them cooped
right.
up in a hotel 24/7. So they would have to let the inmates go and have like an hour outside in the streets of New York. I don't know what was doing, but it was all in like a lot of it was in Hell's Kitchen. Like
That's
Midtown during the pandemic turned out to be a fucking circus. Let me tell you.
that's that's so wild. I like that. That kind of intrigues me, but also terrifies me at the same time. Which also is like improv. It's intriguing and terrifying all at the same time.
I've never been super like intimidated by improv just because, I feel like your mind. I've been really good my whole life at like shutting my brain off
Mm.
because I'm stupid. And that stupidity is
Capricorn
actually,
and
yeah,
Type A. Very hard.
it's really easy, or not easy, but it's a trap to fall into where you overthink improv and you try to use this. But the more you use this, the more, you're already way behind. It's got to
Mhm.
be the first thing. It's got to be guttural. It's got to be instinctual. And the only way to hone that is by doing it.
Mhm.
I tell people all the time, anybody who will listen to me who's not a performer, like my sister is an interior designer, my neighbor's a lawyer. Like I tell everybody, I'm just like, improv is just a good skill to have overall as a human. It makes your
Mhm.
conversations better, makes your listening skills better, and it makes your ability to just use your imagination better.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a single industry where those skills don't come in handy.
Mm. I agree, and I also think a lot of improv is always taught with yes and as the number one rule. I almost want to flip that on its head and say being a good listener is the number one rule because before you can yes and something, you have to know what was offered. And so I think that like there's this whole thing of like yes anding is of course adding on and agreeing with what the person says, but having the ability to actively listen, I think, is almost the first thing you need in improv is to be able to listen.
So after I did all of this improv in LA, I was taking a Meisner class, and a lot of the Meisner technique is active listening, and you know, feel, react, or hear and react, and it's called a pinch ouch. You get pinched, and then it's the immediate instinctual ouch, which is all improv is. If you say something that's out of the ordinary and it catches me by surprise, I'm going to talk about that thing. Whereas, like, if in an acting scene, if somebody does something that's different than you've done in rehearsal, or something that evokes a different emotion out of you, you have to follow that instinct, and it's all
Mm-hmm.
improv. And so, I was in a class there that didn't have a lot of people who've done improv. I think maybe two or three of us did, but those of us who did have an improv background, we definitely were all just like, oh yeah, my improv training definitely helps with that part of the acting. So it makes
Mm-hmm.
you a better performer, in my opinion, because of the active listening. But also, I think when it comes to improv, the number one rule for me is always just like, don't leave your team out to dry.
100%.
Like, you see a lot of really selfish improvisers who make the scene about them,
Mm-hmm.
or who will basically just negate an idea that they hear. And we all know that the whole yes and thing, but until you've been around the block a little bit in improv, which I do not claim to be an expert on improv, I'm just a guy who does improv. um I think it really comes down to that teamwork. where it's about building that universe, like layer upon layer upon layer. And you don't even have to say yes and. If your partner is clearly, if the game is clearly for you to be, poo-pooing their ideas, that's yes anding. Just being just like, oh no, we can't go to the water park, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, okay, well, not the water park. Why don't we go to the National Forest? That National Forest, I got kicked out of there in 1984. They won't let me back in. Like, that becomes the game, but you're still yes anding because someone's feeding you information, knowing what the outcome is going to be, more or less. If you have good chemistry, you've worked together, you know each other's tendencies. So
yeah,
people get so. I've had so many people laugh, chuckle when I say like, "Oh, I can't do whatever tonight. I've got improv rehearsal," and they're just like, "Improv rehearsal? How do you rehearse for improv?" I'm just like, "It's a team sport,
yeah.
We got to shoot our layups and our free throws and stuff, just like somebody who'd be doing this for an NBA game would." So.
And I will say, going off of the sports metaphor, I remember, and this is for someone who is always in his head about improv. I remember it was my 5B class at IO. Holly Laurent was my teacher. Incredible improviser, incredible teacher, and she said to me, or she said to our class, not just like to me, Spencer, here's something I want to tell you. She said to our whole class, she said, all right, so think about these scenes like you're on a basketball court. When you're on the sidelines, you're like in the back, then you're actually on the court. When you're in the scene, you're on the bench. And my mind went, whoa, because I'm always like trying to like figure out when to edit. Because really, when you're on the back line, you're doing the work of the scene, making sure they're having a good scene, making sure you're editing when it's needed to be edited, making sure that you know what to do for a callback. And when you're in the scene, you can just play. And I was like, wow, it's like I can take a break when I'm doing the scene versus feeling like it's a stressful thing for me to get up and like try and organize all this information. And I'm like kind of butchering the metaphor a little bit, but it was such a great way for my brain to go, oh, this isn't stressful. This is easy for me to just go up and have fun. I don't have to worry about anything because the rest of my team has my back. And I think that goes back to the team sport idea of me not going, I'm going to be out here and hopefully I don't falter. It's like, if I start to falter, my team's going to get me out. Like they're going to let us move on to another scene. They're going to clean it. We're going to move on.
See, I don't know how I feel about that. I see the merit of what the analogy is there, but I feel like, I don't know. I mean, because the playing is the improv. The editing, all that stuff, sure, it's there, but I guess I would, to stick on the sports metaphor, I guess I would consider it more to be backline is like a relief pitcher who has to be ready to come in if the starting pitcher needs relief. And you come back there, but you got to stay warmed up. You got to stay sharp. You got to stay ready because that call into the bullpen could come at any time.
That's a good point too.
Yeah, because I feel like that's a very improv teachery metaphor, I guess,
sure,
which is fine. But as far as like practicality and stuff goes, I think the actual scene work is what should be the focus. Obviously, if you're editing and you want to get in the game and you find a way to do that is, helpful and positive for the whole team, finding a new direction to go, then that's great. But yeah, I think the people that are on the stage, in the scene, doing it in the moment, those are the people that like, it's their time. You can't take a break on the back line, but you can let them do the heavy lifting for a bit.
Yeah.
That's my.
Yeah, that makes sense. Awkward segue as always. Do you have any plugs, any pitches you want to share? We'll link them down in the description down there on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, sure. My Instagram is at JD Chacon. That's CHACON 25. I post on there sometimes. I have a TikTok, same thing, JD Chacon 25. That's mostly me just watching TV, finding something weird, and then putting it on TikTok and being like, "Oh, look at this! Isn't that weird? Like, look at that boom operator in the background. Look at the size of that guy's hands." Uh,
Yeah, right.
but yeah, some singing videos and stuff. I do musical theater, but as far as plugs, I don't really have any projects coming up. I have a cabaret coming up in New York, but that's a little down the pipeline. So
Yeah, well, if we can always go back and add it in there once it pops up. So, because everything's variables these days.
February 22nd at Don't Tell Mama. It's a showcase of 6 performers. We each have a 10-minute cabaret that we do. So if you're in New York, February 22nd, it's a Tuesday, come on down to Don't Tell Mama. You can find the link at the Don't Tell Mama's website. So
yeah. And make sure you tell your mamas to go see it too, so there can be more people in the audience.
Hey, yo, mama.
Imamamu ine. Not the rest of the sentence I can figure out in Greek. That was just my mom is. That's where I stopped it. She's then she's not in New York. I guess it's just New York. I don't know actually. All right. Well, anyway, Jason, thanks so much for joining me here on the Improv Summit. I do have one final question for you, and that's kind of the reason that the Improv Summit exists. A lot of times I get people who say, Spencer, you take a lot of improv. Where should I take improv? In that like kind of sort of Gilbert Gottfried style voice. And I always have the same question back, which is like, what do you want from improv? But if someone came up to you and said, where should I take improv? What's like one piece of advice or one tip you'd give to them to help guide them on their improv journey?
Well, it's been a while since I signed up for a class, but I know that one of the things that I always told people is just like, if you're really looking into getting an introductory class, sign up early. I don't know how it is now in a post-pandemic world, but I remember just being like, to get into 101 or 201 at UCB, it took forever sometimes because those classes fill up so quick. As far as the when and where or what have you, the when is anytime you get the urge, anytime you say to yourself, hey, that seems like fun. It is fun for most people. Well, not even for most people, but everybody could take something away from it. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. But go check out Second City. Go check out Groundlings. I would say UCB is an absolutely perfect one to do, but they all have different philosophies. Groundlings is a little bit more character-based. So if you're trying to work a little bit more on being funny characters or even fleshing out a character that you'd like to make a sketch out of, they have a great background for that. Second City, they're just a traditional, Second City, I would say, is probably the most famous of the improv places. I don't know, to a layman, somebody who's not a performer, they know Mike Myers, they know Dan Aykroyd, they know all those guys who were at Second City back in the SNL days, which is ironic because Groundlings is kind of that place now, as he's UCB to an extent too. But it all kind of depends on what you're looking for. UCB has a very different philosophy where they find what's called the game of the scene. And they're just like, okay, once you find this weird thing that this scene is really about, once you find that underlying weird thing, keep feeding that beast. Which, it works in some situations, it doesn't work in others.
Yeah, it's like a tapeworm.
Exactly. Sometimes you lose weight, sometimes you end up shitting your brain out, no in between.
That metaphor, I enjoyed that metaphor quite a lot. And you yes-anded it beautifully. Which, again, I did say that was the last question I had for you. But as always on this show, I'm a big liar. And I actually have another question for you. And that question is, we've been talking a lot about improv. You want to do some improv?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm itching for it.
All right, let's do it. Oh, right, we're going to do some improv. I almost forgot what we were doing here for a second. Jason, all I need from you is the answer to this question. Do you want a location, a relationship, or a word?
Let's do relationship.
I'm going to give you two. You tell me which one you're going to go with. The suggestions are a gondola pilot and a boat inspector, or an organ donor and a recipient.
Gondola pilot and boat inspector was the first one I heard, so we'll go with that.
Great, good choice. That's I was like a gondola pilot. Okay, all right. Who would you
I
like
had
to?
no idea that's what you call a gondola pilot.
I didn't either. I thought it was just someone who boats a gondola uh, with an oar. I don't know. We'll find out, won't we? Who would you like to initiate this scene?
I'll initiate
Great. All right. Thank you.
it. Hi, I'm looking for a Commander Rodolfo.
Kazai.
Yeah, okay. Hey, how you doing, Commander? Yeah, I'm here from the boat district,
Mm.
Venice,
Mm.
and yeah, we've been told that your gondola might have some issues going on that we got to go ahead and take a look at if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you where the issues are. We got some holes in the wood. The oars are a little broken. It seats only about three people. It should really seat about four. It's a little tiny, a little cramped. A couple of bugs getting in and out. I had a case of drowning, but everyone's fine. So yeah, feel free to take a look. But
It seems like your boat's not exactly in the tip-top tourist condition that we look for.
it's yeah. I mean, it's not probably the fanciest gondola you could peruse, but it's got some life in it. It's got
Yeah,
its own little.
I've never seen a boat that has cockroaches at the bottom before. I don't even know how that happens because cockroaches can't swim.
Yeah, I mean, when you dock it, sometimes you just like let them roam around at night, and you don't want to mess with them. They're super peaceful. I'm gonna be upfront with you. Like, this is just like it's probably a pretty old. In fact, it is a pretty old gondola, but it's got history to it, and that's what people love is they come here for the history, the sights and the history. And this boat is definitely a site full of history.
Sure, yeah, that's probably because of the termite damage. That's a lot of history to go about on the boat there. But you know, I'm gonna be honest with you, Commander Rodolfo. Doesn't seem like your boat's really up to snuff to be in the water, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, it's definitely not great for the water. We get by once you get past the sinking into the river, but other than that, like it
Oh,
might need a little maintenance.
hold on. You've sunk into the river with this boat before?
Yeah, I told you it capsized earlier. That was the first thing I said. Is that
With
we've had a
people in
couple
it?
of. Yeah, yeah, of course. They're safe. We get them out. We sully them out. We sully them right out.
You sullied them right out.
Yeah, like Sully, like the plane
I know what
pilot.
you're saying. So what you're saying is that you are the Venetian gondola equivalent of Captain Sullenberger.
Yeah, I think so. But also maybe I'm better because I've actually done it more times than he has. I've rescued more people than he has, in more occasions than he has.
You've had to rescue people on more than one occasion.
Yeah, every time we go out, the boat sinks. There's holes in it from the
Uh,
termite damage, from the cockroaches.
you know, this might not be very beneficial to your case here. I'm trying to look at your boat and let you go off scotch free, but there's a lot of problems here, and especially if people are going out and almost drowning every time you take them out. That's a big problem, especially because the water's only 3 feet deep.
Well, I have you ever? Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard that song? There's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. And then like they keep going. They talk about how can you fix it? You just put something else. You put like some straw in it or something. And then I don't remember how the song goes, but you know that
Yeah,
song. There's a
of
hole in
course,
the
you listen
bucket.
to that song. It's a classic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's kind of what I do with my little gondola here. If there's a hole in it, I just fix it. With
Okay.
whatever's around me.
You sing that song while you're doing gondola rides, do you?
I don't really remember it that much. I just remember like, well, what can you fix it? That doesn't make any sense. I know there's different
Hey,
words
that was
to
a
it.
beautiful singing voice. I didn't know you could
Oh,
sing like that, huh?
well, not as good as I can boat, you know.
Oh, well, that's to be determined. I mean, if your piloting is anything like your boat's condition, you're going to have a lot of problems here in the next couple weeks. But that voice, my goodness, angelic is what it is.
Oh, thank you. I mean, maybe I should like do American Idol or something.
Italian Idol.
Like America's Got Talent.
Italy's Got Talent.
Yeah, like I can see your American voice.
My American voice.
Yeah, I can see your voice, but the American version.
Clearly, I'm German. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, anyway, the boat. Feel free if you want to hop in for a ride. I take you for a spin, a literal spin, because it almost sometimes feels like we're going through a whirlpool with the holes.
You know what? It's been a hell of a week. That sounds like a good way to unwind. Let's go for it.
All right, well, hop in. Take a load off. You can take a real load off right into the river. You see what I did there. Well, just feel free to hop in.
All right. Well, I guess I should tell you before you start going that I can't swim, so this could be a bit of a problem.
It's okay. It's only 3 feet. Just stand up.
I'm trying. It's already starting to sink, and I'm starting to panic.
Yeah. Oh. Here we go.
Oh.
Don't worry. I'll sell you out. Don't worry. Don't you worry. Oh, maybe not. There's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. There's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, a hole.
All right.
Scene! That's how that song goes. I couldn't figure it out. I just remembered. Thanks everyone so much for coming to the Improv. As always, I'm Spencer. That's Jason. See you next time. Bye!